Welcome back. You're watching Footnote. I'm your host, Logan Crawford. We're talking about a remarkable book that is an unusual genre. It is the self-help/fiction genre. It's called The Guru Next Door. It's written by a very remarkable woman by the name of Wendy Dolber. And I said Dolber correctly, right?
Yes, you did.
I was practicing that before. Tell me a little bit about this exploration we were talking about when we went to break, that you had to learn about yourself and you had to learn about how you constructed events and that it was okay to feel good and be happy. Mm-hmm. Tell me about that exploration.
Well, when I was younger, in my early 20s when I met Bruce, I would get withdrawn when I didn't get what I wanted. Mm-hmm. I would get very hurt.
Right.
And it affected my relationships. And that was one of the things that I wanted to work on. And when I met Bruce, I found out through this method and what I learned about myself is what was behind that, which was that I felt basically that I wasn't a worthwhile person.
Right.
And that I didn't know how to deal with that and how to ask for what I wanted. And when I found out that that was really what was behind it, that really freed me up to really get in touch with what I actually really wanted. And I was constantly squelching my desires.
Right. I mean, you really, if you're going to achieve something, whether it's happiness, a professional goal, or a personal goal, you've got to decide that you want it.
Yes.
And it's okay for you to have it and take the steps necessary to accomplish it.
That's right.
Right. Rather than having a limiting belief that I'll never get it anyway, this never happens to me, it happens to other people.
And there's something wrong with me.
Right.
You know.
How did we learn that lesson for you, that there was something wrong with you? Was it your parents?
Yes, I think, not to blame them.
Right,
not
I understand,
to blame them,
but you have to come to terms with the responsibility that other people have in the formation of your identity at a young age. And I think it's very, very fair. It's not blaming, it's trying to piece together the puzzle that is you, and which is each individual, right?
Yes, and I'm glad you brought that up because that's really something that I bring out in the book, mm-hmm. which is why I used a child. I used a child to show that children, where their beliefs come from, and that children have choices about their beliefs. So in the book, you can see, just like in my life, Annie is surrounded by unhappy people who are conveying that to her and conveying their beliefs to her. Mm-hmm. You have to feel bad under this situation and that situation. And even the grandmother would say to Annie, you know, I have to say, like, my grandmother used to say this to me too, if it wasn't for you, your mother would be a happier person.
That's an awful thing to say.
It's not a nice thing to say to a child, but what I'm showing in the book is that children have choices. When my grandmother said that to me when I was a child, I remember thinking, oh no, you're wrong. That couldn't possibly be true. But years and years of that being reinforced.
Right. And the modeling that's going on in the family, that events are interpreted as, you know, you're deserving of blame, you're deserving of bad things, you know. So a child does have a choice, just like we as adults have a choice to construct events differently and interpret them differently. But it's hard when you basically are a child and you're being programmed by parents.
And your survival is based on your parents. They're feeding you, they're housing you, and we want them to like us. And so what do? We mimic their beliefs. Right. And I think after a while, we forget that we did that. And then it becomes part of us. And that's why this method is so wonderful, because it helps people to understand that. Oh, you get down to the ultimate belief. Mm-hmm. And you realize, I only believe that because my parents told me that. Well, do you believe it now? Well, actually, no.
Right.
And you could really be free at that point.
Is the ultimate belief different for each person, based on the answers to the questions as you go through the option method?
Well, it's interesting, but yes, it is. But there are certain essential beliefs that keep coming up over and over and over again.
And they are?
It's bad to be happy under this situation. Mm-hmm. There's something wrong with me.
Right.
I could be bad for myself. I'm a worthless person. And if I wasn't unhappy, I wouldn't do anything to change the situation. That's a big one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Repeat it for me one more time.
If I wasn't unhappy, I wouldn't do anything to change the situation.
Right.
And
that the situation isn't wrong? Is that what that belief is saying?
What the belief is saying is that I don't like what's happening. Mm-hmm. And that I have to feel bad about it, because if I didn't feel bad, I wouldn't do anything to change it.
Right.
And so it's like we have to be unhappy almost as permission to get to change something that we don't like, when we can we don't have to be unhappy about it. We can trust our own desires to just want to change things.
Right. I mean, I have a nephew who's in law school, and whenever an exam is coming up or a project to do, he has to make himself miserable
right.
in order to motivate
right,
himself.
Exactly.
Unless he's so hard on himself, he doesn't feel like he's having the proper response. Instead of saying, this is a tough situation, but you know what? I've gotten this far in law school. I'm a smart person. I can do that. No problem.
Right.
Let's figure out a way to do it.
Right.
So that's a healthy way of thinking. An unhealthy way of thinking is, oh, why does this always happen to me? And it becomes a blame game with yourself. So part of the blame that you're putting on people is the blame you're putting on yourself.
Right, right.
Why did you choose not to write a self-help book directly and instead couch it within a fiction book? Which I like the fact that you did. Let me give you that premise. But let me ask you why you made that decision and how you came to it.
I think it was maybe the movie Mary Poppins that has that song, I won't sing it. Just a spoonful of sugar helps the minute. Okay, I'm singing it.
Whenever you say I'm not going to sing it, you sing it.
Okay.
That's okay.
That was one reason. One reason was that a lot more people are going to pick up a fiction book and just by accident learn some ways that they could be happier than people that are actually out there looking for a self-help book.
Right.
So that was one reason.
So they're almost like an accidental reader. They're picking up a novel, and they might learn something in this novel that's rooted in reality and truth, as opposed to a person who might be troubled and not realize it. They're not going to go to the self-help section necessarily.
Right. Yeah. Right. So that was a big reason. And I have to say also, it wasn't natural for me to write it as a self-help book. I don't want to be an expert.
Right.
I don't want to be an expert. I want to be somebody who's sharing something that I learned.
Exactly.
And then I'm hoping that the next person will share it. Just like Bruce taught me, I want to teach someone else, and I want them to teach someone else, and that's what I'm hoping for with the book.
Right.
So, I mean, honestly, I would give this book away if people would read it.
Right.
Because I think that there's so many wonderful things to say. So, it wasn't attractive to me to write as a self-help book. It came to me as
an idea
a novel.
for a novel.
Yes.
Yeah.